So if somebody's trying to raise capital in private equity and real estate, and they want to have good outbound strategies, how should they start or going about this process?
Yeah. So it's changed a lot over the years. Like I've been doing outbound for 10 plus years now. And 3, 5, 7 years ago, you could get away with just pulling a massive list and just kind of spray and pray and hope for the best and honestly get some decent results. But there are a number of steps to follow. Like for me, the way that I see this, first of all, we need to change the mindset around outbound. This is one of the biggest things that I try to share with people. Less of a pitch. Trust is lower than it's ever been. This is more of a how do we start conversations with good people and add value to good people and get things happen from there.
Mhm.
And if you are intentional about your proactive outreach, really good things happen. But 99.9% of people are not that way. And that's why it doesn't work for them. So there are a couple things to keep in mind. You're correct. Like for me, the way that I see outbound also is that it requires less speculation because I think for a lot of us, we're trying to understand what audience is the best fit, what message is the best fit, what hook is the best fit, what offer is the best fit, what's attracting the best people. And you can use outbound, heavy outbound at scale to test that data too, to test your theories, to let the data make the decisions for you. And I think that's an interesting piece of the puzzle as well. So, like, I'm just going to break down what this looks like today. Of course, there are a lot of ways to do this. I want to start by the caveat of like, there are a million different tools to use, but I think this is such a simple route for anybody that's trying to raise capital to get in front of the right people. So,
Nice.
good with that. I can kind of walk through
Yeah,
what
man. I'm
those
here for.
like.
I'm here for it. Let's go, baby.
All right. Sweet. So, first thing today that's harder than ever is just the outbound infrastructure in general. And what that means to break that down a little bit is just how are we actually landing in primary inboxes, right? There are so many spam filters anymore, and there are so many scammers out there and spammers, people that have really abused outbound over the years. And so all these platforms like Google and Microsoft, they are really trying to protect against that today. And almost every year gets a little bit harder and harder. So step number one is your outbound infrastructure. And if you don't nail this, literally nothing else will work because if you're not landing in the right inboxes, nothing else is going to work. So that has to be step number one. And what that usually means is as you're doing outreach, right, we're thinking, let's just start with email. You never want to use your primary domain or emails to do that outreach. For those who have done outbound, they know this to be true, but you always want to protect the reputation of your primary domain for client use, for client communication, for employee communication. So usually what that means is spinning up some kind of separate domains and emails, similar to whatever the brand is. So it could be, if your typical URL is CapEx Media, maybe that's capexmediahq.com, for example, something similar, something on brand. But you could spin these up and best practice is 4 emails under one domain, not more than that. And so that typically just, it's best practice for deliverability. If something happens with the reputation of one of those domains that you spin up and it gets marked as, flagged as spam too often, it's not going to destroy all of your campaigns. It will only hurt those few within that domain. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Now, what I completely follow because I've had this conversation with you before, and I've kind
Right.
of taken what you literally. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hit the mic. Taken what you've literally just taught me, and I've implemented it. So tell me if I did this right. So I hired somebody to develop a list for me, and I took the list, and then I ran it through zero bounce. And the first list they gave me was like, I'll say 400 and we'll just say 500 contacts. 500 of those contacts, whatever zero bounce their filter was, whatever that was, it spit out and said like 300 of these are good, like they passed. So I don't know necessarily what that is, but so then I ran 300, and then I used instantly.ai for my campaign, and I
Mhm.
created those dummy accounts like I had CapEx Media Group, the capexmediagroup.com, and capexmedia.inc or something like that. But I was only creating two for that. Now, my question to you is one, how often are you checking to see if your domain is not marked as spam? And the second question is, how long does that shelf life of a new domain usually last? So like if I created capexmediahq.com, like you said, and I'm running a campaign, do those typically get flagged as spam within 6 months, a year? Do they have a long shelf life? Like, what does that look like?
So one quick follow-up question. When you said you spun up two, are you saying you did two domains or are you saying you did two emails under each of the domains
Yeah,
that you
so I
spun
did,
up?
I did. I'd have to double check, but I did. I know I did two separate emails
Mhm.
per domain, and I think I did 3 domains. So I did 6 total,
Six total emails. Yeah.
yeah. So you're saying I should have done 4?
You could do up to four. So I would say that's the max limit. Two is totally fine. Just to be crystal clear, two is totally fine. Essentially what we're trying to do is minimize risk and try to keep it as concentrated as possible, right? So like if
Mhm.
you spun up 30 emails under one domain, first of all, that might already get flagged just as being suspicious. Second of all, if you hurt that domain reputation from even one of those emails, it could hurt the reputation of all the rest of the emails under that domain. So
Oh,
anything from, one to four essentially is kind of a safe bet as long as you're rotating. I'm gonna answer your question in a couple different ways here because I'm gonna work into to all of those. The way that you did it in instantly is fine. I there are a number of things. So all right, let's take a step back. Shelf
yeah.
life completely depends on a million different factors. And so for me, two things to consider. Number one, instantly, which is a good platform, and I'll get into that as well. For cold outbound, they show you your email health directly in there. And typically, best practice, according to them as well, is like as long as your score, your health on instantly for each email is above like a 90%, 92%, you should be okay when it comes to deliverability. Ideally, we want to have that somewhere between the 95 to 100% range. So when you're in instantly and you're in the emails tab, you can see directly under each email, it'll show you like 97% or 94%. It'll show you the health of each of those emails. Second is, when it gets burned, to be honest, I haven't seen it too much because every campaign I ever run for myself or for clients is wildly intentional and like crazy segmented. Like there is no, we're just blasting out a random email to 30,000 people. I would say if you're doing really heavy volume, you're trying to test, certain things out, you don't know if it's going to land with the right audience. Maybe your list isn't great, you could burn things pretty quickly. Like those might go down the drain because if people are flagging it as spam quite often, and you don't have some sort of unsubscribe link in there or something like that, I mean, you could burn that probably within weeks of running campaigns if you're really not careful. I haven't run into too many issues. If they go below 90% and instantly, typically what I'll do is pull them out of the campaign and just run them through the warm up process a little bit. And that's
Mhm.
kind of part of that outbound infrastructure. You want to make sure you configure the DNS settings. If you do that through instantly, like you did, they do all that for you. So that's SPF, that's DKIM, and that's DMARC, which gets a little bit technical, but they set all that up for you. It's really easy to go click a button to get the domain, to get the URLs through instantly. That said, it gives you a lot less control over those domains and emails themselves. Like,
I had the domains that I liked. I had one domain that was called like or not even those, called capexmediagroup.com, right? And, then they're like the one click installation or whatever. And I was like, how do I get the domain that I already have in there? And it was hard as a bitch. And I was like, well, fuck it. I'm just going to try and buy a new
yeah,
one. And then I bought a new one and then it worked. And then somehow I figured out that they were able to like give me a password, right? So then I was able to get the password to actually like go into the
login
upper right hand
making.
corner, click it when it says like add an account.
Yeah.
Because what I also found out from instantly was when let's use them to reply from like a CRM standpoint, to reply back, you had to have like the hyper growth account or whatever. And
97
so
of
I was like, oh, I'll go to reply. And they're like, no, you can't reply. I was like, what kind of shit is this? I was like, how do I reply to these people? It's like, no, you need to reply through Gmail, not
manually. Yeah.
through instantly. And I was like, oh my God, this is so much more complicated. Like what you're saying is like if you're buying them through the platform, that's gonna be a hell of a lot easier. And I think it's cheaper
Yeah.
too.
Exactly. I would there are a couple, and this is like a big part of this too. It's like we need to talk about how you're setting this because it sounds good in theory. It's like, oh, just spin up some new domains and emails. What does that mean, right? Like taking it all the way back to the beginning. I would argue there's two ways to do this. Three ways. But number one is to do it manually. You literally go into Google Workspace and you spin out, accounts like you would set up a Google Workspace account. You keep it a business account. Google Workspace makes it really easy to do that. You want to be careful that you don't do too many of those, like from your same IP, but that's nothing that anybody needs to worry about if they're doing it for themselves.
Yep.
They're partnered or they bought Squarespace. I don't know what the connection is, but essentially you can literally buy the domain exactly in the Google Workspace process as you're building out the emails. And they already set up like SPF and DKIM. Let's put it this way. It's a longer process to do it manually, but if you want long-term deliverability and reputation, it's the best way to do it because you have full control over what's happening with that domain and with those emails. And if you run into an issue, you can have that conversation with Google about what's going on and try to get it fixed. Whereas if you do it in the Instantly ecosystem, but you have no control over that, right? And so it can become a problem where I found like they might pull together a lot of different workspaces and emails. And I have run into issues even with clients where I'm running into errors and things are getting suspended and I have no control over any of that. It's under their ecosystem. And all they would offer is they'll just give you some new ones for free. And that's an issue too, because there's a warm up process that needs to happen here as well, which is kind of one of the final steps in that infrastructure piece is that once you set up all these emails and you need to try to mimic human behavior and conversation a little bit, they say best practice is 2 to 4 weeks. Instantly does that for you. Just to be super clear, this doesn't need to be super complex, but Instantly can do that for you. You literally just click the warm up button, you let it ride for a couple weeks. And what it does is it kind of conversates back and forth with your new emails that you built out and makes it look where there's a little bit of a higher reply rate. It's conversational, it's less salesy, it's making sure you're not getting flagged for spam. So it's kind of the whole goal of that is to boost the reputation of those so that when you start running cold campaigns, which have a lower reply rate, it already looks like you have a better reputation. And that's kind of like that last piece of the puzzle. So
Yeah.
take that back. You could do manually. You could literally just go into Google Workspace, spin these up, or Microsoft for that matter. The second option that I found is called Zapmail. Now, I will say they are also a third-party Google reseller, but if you don't want to touch any manual stuff and you just want to set up these domains and emails at scale pretty quickly, they integrate with Instantly, so you can just at the click of a button move those domains and emails to Instantly for campaigns. They're a third-party reseller again, so deliverability might not be as good as you having full control. But I'm saying for the people that don't want to go manually spin all this up themselves,
Yeah.
Zapmail is not a terrible option yet.
Yeah.
So
Now let me ask you a question. So where are people initially going to get the list to send? So
yeah,
we kind of know like you spin up these names, all this, but how do you like how do people go about getting a list? Because like I've done this a couple times now. I've found some mild success. I've gotten clients from it, but I feel like whenever I'm making these lists, like I'm going on LinkedIn and I'm like just creating some bullshit, and I'm like, okay, I feel like I have 600 like relatively because like you said earlier, like hey, we're very warm and intentional and we're making this sound good. It's like, okay, so how do you create a good list, make it sound warm and intentional, know what you're doing, and yeah, have a good list? Like how what are your thoughts there?
yeah. So once you nail that infrastructure, data is for sure the next priority, right? Like ultimately with poor data or limited data, you're not going to get the results either. You mentioned you hired somebody just out of curiosity. Was it like a offshore VA that was able to scrape leads for you based on the criteria you gave that person? Is that kind of
Yeah.
what you
Yeah,
did? Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
So I've done that a gazillion times and I've found varying results. I think most of them don't know your audience as well as you know your audience. What I've found is that even if they have the right intention, it's still just broader in nature. It's not the cleanest quality data. Uh, it can work. I would argue that out of all the platforms, the most intuitive and user friendly and also cost effective is Apollo IO. Um, there are a lot of platforms like that, right? There's Zoom Info. There's literally a gazillion that do the same thing,
Yeah.
but Apollo is pretty easy to use, fairly affordable, and you can break down criteria at a pretty granular level within Apollo. You can even look at different actions and intent data. You can exclude certain keywords. And what I'll say is like it's taken me a long time to really nail how to build a good list in there. Um, it's capable of all of it, but you need to understand how to exclude certain people, how to put like, I'll just give you an example. And this is something that I could share my screen if you wanted me to walk through Apollo
Or
to
do you want
share
me to
what
share? You want to share?
sure. Yeah, maybe it's helpful to visualize what this looks like,
Mhm.
right? Because it is an important piece of the puzzle for
Yeah,
sure.
because I was just pulling it up now. And what's the other one? I want to say Tweet Hunter, but it's like Hunter. What's the one that's like a Hunter?
Hunter, yeah, Hunter is another one. It's just called Hunter IO or something like that.
Now I find some of them kind of do some similar services as well, where they're like, "Hey, we can do what Zero Bounce does as well," right? They're like, "We
Yeah.
could get the leads, and then we'll do what Zero Bounce does." And I'm like, "Is this as good?" And I'm like, "Okay, now I'm starting to be like, do I juggle these packages? Like, what do I do here?"
So yeah, this is the fun game we play of there are a million tools out there. It's like, is it worth adding on another 30, 40, $50 for something? What I've found, first of all, so this is kind of just what the base layer of Apollo looks like in here.
Yeah.
I'll just kind of walk you through what this looks like, and I'll answer your question here as well. You always want to be searching for people, not companies, just to be clear. When you
Okay.
go to that, you're going to get a list of criteria over here. And there are a lot of cool things that you could do. There is a free version of Apollo. I believe you still have to pay to export a certain amount of leads out of
Yeah.
there. I pay for like, I don't know, it's $60 a month or something because it gives you a little bit more data to work with, like signals, buying signals and stuff like that too. You can look
So
at
based
technology.
off of Apollo right now, can we do an example of like if we
Mhm.
were trying to find an accredited investor,
Yeah,
if you're trying to target high net worth accredited investors, potentially those are doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs. You're looking at more affluent markets, Miami, Los Angeles.
for sure. So once you're in here, I'm just going to keep this like super high level, but the
Yeah.
first you always want to do is make sure that the email status under here, this is the first thing that you're going to click down on. Make sure you're only looking for verified emails. That's the first step.
Okay.
I like to exclude catch-all emails. It automatically checks this to include catch-all emails.
What does that mean?
Uh, you don't ideally in these campaigns, you want to avoid catch-all emails. When it comes to deliverability, a lot of times those can be sent to like a larger pool of emails, and that can cause issues long term as well. Typically, catch-all is questionable when it comes to deliverability. I usually just exclude this, and we don't have to get super complex with what this
Yeah.
looks like. I
Okay.
think it's best to look at like these two are the first things you do when you get to the email status side. And then the rest is fairly intuitive, but it takes time. So let's look at this as like, okay, let's just do something really basic. Let's just say doctors in Miami, like you mentioned, right? This is where you search for a job title. Now, two things to consider. This gets a little bit into the weeds, but I think it's really important. If you just type doctor in here and you click enter or you click on that,
Yeah.
it's going to give you a broader range of job titles that might not be exactly doctor, but they might be close to doctor. And so, depending on the type of campaign that you want to run and the messaging around that, uh, it matters here. And so, like, the alternative to that is to get rid of this check mark where it includes similar titles. That's the first step. And this is something where, like, if you want to target only, let's just,
Pediatricians.
all right, Here's the here's the secret sauce to this one. All right. So in this one, I'm putting these in quotations instead of just clicking enter on
Okay.
pediatrician. I'm assuming that's spelled right.
Yep.
Right. And so that seems like a small change, but when it comes to the way that it scrapes the data for you, it only gives you specifically those who have only pediatricians in there.
There you go.
So
Plastic surgeon. There we go. Miami,
Let's give this
baby.
a let's give this a shot. So it's still we haven't broken down location just yet. So a couple different thoughts here, right? So as we're looking through, I look at this a couple different angles. Number one, you focus your campaigns on a very specific job title, like somebody who specifically has plastic surgeon in there, but you might have to go a little bit broader, like US based. But what I would say is like it's one or the other. Either focus on a very specific job title because you could speak to that person, right? So in your messaging, you say, we partner with plastic surgeons specifically. And
Yeah.
that message will hit a little bit harder than we partner with those in healthcare or healthcare leaders or healthcare executives or
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
Like it's a very specific one. You have to think about limitations on data. Now, what I would say is you could also go a lot broader on job titles where I could put in here pediatrician, plastic surgeon, ophthalmologist, whatever it is, like all these different specialties and niches that ideally are high income. And I could expand this a lot and then focus on location being Miami. So now you could say, hey, we partner with a lot of healthcare executives or doctors in the Miami area, right? So it's like what you kind of got to pick one or the other, or else you're not going to have enough data to work with. I'm guessing if I pick Miami here with just plastic surgeon, there's going to be less than 50. You know what I mean?
Okay.
It's just not enough. It's not enough data to work with from these lists. That makes
Okay.
sense?
Yeah, it does. Now, anything else that we should be doing? There's AI filters.
Yeah.
Is that just fluff, or is that actually?
Yeah, I haven't, honestly, I haven't played with it too much. So in these campaigns, as you're pulling these, that's the biggest factor to think. Like, don't overcomplicate this right now. Think of something relatable. You want your outbound to come off as human and relatable as possible. So if you can touch on even your state, like I'll say this, you can get fancy with AI stuff. But when I'm targeting, my audience in Colorado, for example, and I'm here, I'm in Golden. They know what Golden is. They're in Colorado as well. Literally just pulling a list of people who might be a little bit broader but are here in the state gets a much, much higher response rate than just kind of like a broad scan of those people. And so like what I would do is just focus on one or the other or both. So just pick one job title, perhaps across the US, where you say we partner specifically with you, like exactly what, people exactly like what you do.
Yeah.
Or second to that, just pick a state, pick a city, and go a little bit broader on the job title. But that's
Mm.
where you're going to find enough data to work with to test those different audiences. Another thing you could consider here as well, it depends like, do they own their own practice? Are they working in a practice, but still high net worth, right? There are a lot of things to consider here. If they you could have something in here where maybe they're owners of their own healthcare practice. And that could be like the job title that you're targeting. And in that case, you might want to look at employee size, for example. It's a good one where you can create a custom range depending on like, knowing how big they might be as a company. I would avoid revenue. I find with especially smaller companies, it's just not accurate data, right? It's not publicly available as much.
Yeah.
And so you don't find as much accurate data. So if you're going to try to figure out the size of a company that you want to go after, just focus on employees and not revenue.
What is?
Scores, it's essentially like the likelihood, I believe the likelihood of them being a good fit for what you're trying to do and or response rate, I think, as
Mhm.
well. So I haven't done a ton with scoring in here specifically. If you're gonna do any sort of scoring, there's a whole nother platform that's clay.com. And like as much as I would like to share the complex stuff in there, it's just not necessary to get results. If you're trying to raise capital, you're trying to drive capital, drive funding, connect with the right people or high net worth individuals. You don't need to go super, super complex. What you need to do is have a really good, clean list that's segmented by something relatable, whether that's city, state, job title, and you just speak to that. And that will for sure drive results as long as it's
And
intentional.
so you focus on pick a niche, either pick a city, pick like a state like Florida or Colorado, right? So let's say you pick Colorado and your first initial email. So we'll say for real estate investors, right? Or that we'll say for high net worth individuals that are lawyers. You can say, hey, we specifically help lawyers create passive income in the state of Colorado. Are you trying to get them straight on a call? Like, what you trying to keep the conversation? Like, what are you trying to do?
Yeah. So let me show this example and then I'll walk you through that real quick
Yeah,
because you just mentioned
definitely.
employer, and I think this might be a better like visual representation of what's possible here. So let me just break this down of like how you're gonna do this. Let's just make the assumption we're gonna keep this simple, kind of go broader on lawyer for job title. Obviously there are a lot of, partner, associate lawyer, Okay. So you see the substantial difference here in the size, right? So that last one only had like 700 or 600 something. So we're global right now. We're not even narrowed down by location in the US, but just for those who want to see this in action too, it's a great opportunity to where like you can look at, right? So two things to consider here, and then I'll answer your question on the message because this will matter as well. So you have the contact here when you're under the location filter, you have the contact Florida. That means that person specifically is in Florida. Depending on who you're going after and how much it matters, the account HQ might also come into play, which means that the business is also headquartered in Florida. For many campaigns that are run, it does matter if I'm speaking to a location, right? And so for both of these to be Florida, um, right? So that drops that list quite a bit down in the on the lawyer side. But now you have a list of 256 lawyers just within Florida specifically. And if you go in here and you do something where you're adding like partner and whatnot, you can play around with this and see substantially different results. Really, what you want to focus on here, and Instantly does a good job of this too. As you're going into campaigns, a multi-step sequence is good. What I would say is email number one needs to be text only, no HTML, no fancy images, no links, no anything like that. You need email number one to deliver. If you start adding a bunch of links and other stuff in there, spam trigger words. By the way, if you want to know what words trigger for spam, just chat GPT it because there are literally so many. When you start saying about free or offers or putting all kinds of different stuff in there that sounds salesy, they're gonna flag it for
Money
spam.
back
So
guaranteed, 30-day
yeah,
trial, free
yeah, it's gonna be
trial.
so
Yeah.
you gotta watch because if you have too much of that going on, you're not gonna deliver again.
And
Yep, you don't. So in Instantly, email number one is always conversational. Email number one is like you're talking to a friend, a colleague. And I know that sounds funky, but this is why we have to be intentional about who we're targeting here. Like
I
this
want you to know,
isn't,
can you craft like a broad one for like
yeah,
any, like, it does not necessarily have to be real estate, but talk to me like a dummy. Like I'm five, because what you might think is
yeah.
like what, because people hear this, I do this all the time. I'm like, okay, yeah, simplify. And then I have like a large text, two or three sentences, and I have one, three, and I'm like two, and I'm one. I'm like,
Mhm.
is this still like, could you paint a broad stroke of like what a good, like not even a good, but just like maybe like what a first initial email would look like?
Yeah, sure. So just to kind of keep it simple without showing visually, and
Yeah.
I could share that after kind of what I typically do as well. Let's just say you're located in Florida and you want to go after lawyers in Florida, right? We're going to keep
Yep.
it super simple. There are two options here, and I've tested the heck out of both. Number one is get fancy with AI personalization, where you're pulling data from their website, talking about their business, talking about news and stuff like that. Like if you're starting with outbound and you're trying to get this rolling, just be a freaking human. Like just be real. And so what that means in that first message, you want it to be under ideally 125, 130 words, maybe even less, right? So you don't have a ton of time. Nobody has an attention span. You start with, hey, custom variable, right? Hey, Mike, hey, Matthew, whatever it is. You can always put that custom variable in there. I'm just located here in Miami and I've been connecting with some lawyers across Florida who are interested in, in going into some larger investments or some real estate investments or going in, and pulling investment syndicate deals in real estate. I partner with a lot of different lawyers or a lot of different doctors across the state. And just wanted to quickly introduce myself, something along the lines of a light CTA where you're relatable. You're saying, hey, I'm just, here down the road, noticed what you're doing there at X, Y, and Z company, for example. You could do something like that. Would it be worth a conversation? Is it worth 15 minutes to see if there's value here for you? So
I
the
like that.
CTA is super, super light, right? It is literally like, hey, thought this could be a win-win for us. You're right here in my state is relatable. This is exactly what I do. And I've been connecting with, partnering with a lot of other lawyers in the state. Would it be worth, 14 minutes of your time next week to see if there's value here for you? And something super light like that, that's your sign off. That's it. Adding a PS line often helps boost rates as well, response rates. That sounds really, basic, but like it just looks a little more human. And that could be something along the line of,
P.S. Are you a
um,
Rockies fan?
yeah, you can literally put it like anything human, and this is where it's like, how do you just come off as like, hey, I'm just a guy down the road. I thought this might be of value. you, figured I'd throw it out there. Would love to have a conversation. That's it. There's no links. There's no fancy text. Signature goes directly and instantly. It's literally just your name, who you are, what company you're with, and maybe your location, right? Like super simple. Like you don't want to be doing some fancy stuff in there either because it won't deliver. So that's kind of the high level, like email number one, right? Like I know that's a pretty general picture,
Yeah.
but it goes incredibly well because it's not threatening, right? And like lowers their guard immediately. Think of what I just said compared to, hey, Mike, we got some
Okay.
really good investments going for lawyers right now. Would love to have a conversation, like just where you start like pitching it immediately compared to, hey, Mike, notice you're running XYZ here, Florida. I'm actually located just in Miami. Um, I do X, Y, and Z. Would it be, worth a quick chat, right? It's less threatening.
For sure. For sure. And then you were saying before, when we talked, you were saying something along the lines. Let's say they open the first email, and then the second email, maybe you included a link, and then you could see who clicked on
Yeah.
the link. Maybe that was like a YouTube video or something. And then let's say you go back, or you send 3 emails, and they've opened 3 and they've clicked a link. Well, you know that they have like they've been opening and they've clicked on a link, or so they have some intention. And then you'll reach back out to them and say like, "Hey, I've seen you watched my video or something about whatever," and then you follow up again. Does that sound something right?
Yeah,
Okay.
super powerful. So the nice thing about these platforms is that you can track somewhat intent data. And so a couple just high level thoughts. Number one, I wouldn't track opens at all. It's usually not relevant. It's usually not accurate. What you could track though is click rates. And you could do that in instantly to where you don't track opens, but you do track click rates. So like you said, in email number 2 and ongoing, um, you can start adding. So like, here's what I typically do, right? Email number 1, super conversational. Ideally, just try to start a conversation, open up a call, whatever that is, get a response. Number 2, you can add some sort of value link in there. And so this is where, like, again, from a really low pressure standpoint, I'm like, I don't even say anything about, hey, just following up. Like, it's just, hey, I thought you might find this really valuable. I created this resource for, doctors or lawyers just like you. It's just a quick video breakdown of like how you can drive, how you can better invest the income that you have or
Is that a
whatever that looks
Loom? Is
like.
that a Loom or is that a
It
YouTube
can
video?
be whatever you want. So you can add that link into there. So just know that like it can't be like hyper personalized to every person. It has to be like this could be a YouTube video. It could be a Loom. It could for sure be a general Loom. Anything that they can click on and get value from. To where that email number 2 is like no high pressure at all. It's just I thought you might find this of value. It's exactly like the steps that we work with a lot of different doctors to drive more passive income or whatever that looks like. And then you can always have a light CTA in that PS line at the bottom of that too, right? So that second email is like all about how do we just give them a little bit of value? You can add that link in there. Maybe the PS is like, would still love to chat for a few minutes. If you're open to it, just give me a shout, no pressure. And now all of a sudden you can start tracking people who click on that link. Even if they don't respond to you, it instantly does a really good job of keeping those metrics there so that you can see who's clicking on a link and perhaps showing some interest, even if they don't respond to you. Is the data perfect? Probably not. There's probably some bot activity in there, but it gives you a good sense of who might be interested in what you're talking about. Maybe they clicked your link, they saw the resource. It could be a guide, a checklist for them to think about as they're looking at passive income later in their career, right? Something along those lines. And you can start seeing if they click on those links there. And that is a good opportunity for long-term ecosystem to keep those people in your pipeline and keep them close, knowing that they might have showed some signs of interest, but maybe the timing wasn't right. Maybe they're going through a crazy time in their life that they can't deal with it, but they're interested, right? Whatever that looks like. Maybe they don't trust you enough yet, but you know that there's some interest in what you're offering. And I think that's a pretty cool thing long term to keep in your back pocket.
Nice. And then if they did click on the link, would you you specific well, 2 things. Would you specifically mention it like in a follow-up email? Or and the other question is, would you repurpose and try and target them on a different channel as well? So like
Yeah.
if you're sending a cold email and they click on the link, or maybe you can see that they opened up a couple emails, would you like hit them up on LinkedIn as well and say, "Hey, Tom, like I don't know if you saw my message, blah blah." Would you do that as well? Just hit them everywhere.
It's 2025. Like the consumer journey, whether we're talking about selling something or trying to find investors or whatever, it is messy. And everything is messy. Like there is no perfect funnel. And so what I've found is that omni-channel, if you really want high conversions, you're going to get email responses, right? Like you're going to get stuff even just from that alone on that first touch. But combining something that's a little bit more personal, like LinkedIn, like voicemail drops, like handwritten letters. By the way, you can integrate all of this. There are so many different platforms that you literally could just like create a web of automations, which is a whole nother thing. But it's cool. Anyway, the whole point being, how do you go one or two steps beyond what everybody else does? That's my thought process here. It's like, it doesn't have to be crazy complex. But if you see that they're showing interest, you give them a follow on LinkedIn, maybe you engage with them, you like a couple of posts or give them a comment, connect with them. It's not pushy, it's not salesy, but ideally they've seen your name pop up a couple different times now. That's going to boost your response rates, your conversions substantially. And that's going to keep people in your ecosystem too, especially if they follow back. And I will say the one caveat here is it depends on the job title and the industry, that target audience, how active they are on LinkedIn. Obviously, some are more than others.
Yeah.
But for the most part, that alone, just having that extra touch point, I think omni-channel is like this, like it's thrown around a lot. I really think it's important. And as long as it's intentional, it's going to help a lot because so many people stop at one email. They do a massive blast. They do one email and it takes a lot of testing. Like I think like as we think through this, what I would recommend is setting up a bunch of different campaigns, a bunch of different A/B tests. It doesn't have to be fancy, just like test different hooks and subject lines and audiences and see what's working, see what's resonating. Give that a 2, 3, or 4 step sequence, maybe over a couple months, right? You don't want to batter people every week. That's annoying too. Nobody wants
Yeah.
that. But if you like lightly nurture understanding in people's mind, number one, they need to see your name a little bit more, trust you, get some, resources from you, see your site, know what you do. And then that time might come in 2 months where they're like, yeah, let's talk. Some people within a week, they're like, yeah, let's do it. I've had deals that have taken years, literally years of me nurturing. And so if you can kind of just run this on autopilot a little
Yeah.
bit smarter, I'm not saying just mass blast people. I'm saying a little bit more intelligent where you let it do a lot of that busy work for you. I mean, you get some incredible results from that for pretty minimal cost, you know?
How many sequences do you usually, or like email sequences, do you recommend that people run?
Um, Depends on what you're offering. It depends on your intentions because you don't want to string together 5 emails that sound the same. You know what I mean? Like what I really like to do is kind of just like separate anywhere between 2 and 4 emails. If I'm trying to go for something quick, something direct, it'll be 2 emails within probably like a 2-week span. So it's pretty quick. If we don't get them in the next 2 weeks, let's move on. But there are other audiences that maybe it's a smaller lead list where we're going to nurture, and I'll give you an example of exactly how this plays out. So number one would be that like conversational one, really light. Number two would be maybe some sort of link to a resource. Oftentimes I'll do like a number three, which is case study, some sort of social proof. Hey, we helped this person do this, right? So like it kind of adds to that credibility. We're just lightly nurturing that. Maybe we do that a couple weeks after that second one. We give it a little bit of like breathing room there too. Hey, thought of you for this. We just helped XYZ down the street do whatever. That sounds a little salesy, but you get the point. Like, how do we just boost credibility and social proof?
Yeah.
Because they probably don't trust you yet. That's a reality. This is all cold. And then maybe the fourth one is a final sign off, right? And you have this pattern over even a 2 month span, where it might be a timing thing, it might be a trust thing. And it's not a terrible thing. You don't want to do 4 emails, 3 days after each other, just blasting people with the same offer, right? So it kind of is
Yeah.
subjective there.
Are you, that totally makes sense. Are you, because I know before you said Apify and then the Clay, and I looked at Clay. Clay seems very advanced. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's why I haven't gone down that road. Like the reality is those platforms are wildly robust. Like they can give you so much cool. They could tell you what companies, recently expanded. They can go scrape sites to create hyper personalized messages. They could tell you who recently raised money. Like that's just the basic core of it. These things can do any sort of research that you can do as a human. This is why I'm starting with a really basic tech stack of just like you need to spin up the emails and domains. The next step is where are you getting your data? Just use Apollo. For the most part, you could use technically Sales Navigator or whatever. Just use a basic tool, something really simple. Use instantly for email. If you want to automate LinkedIn at scale, which I don't think is a bad thing either, one of the better platforms I've used is Expandy, it's called. And so that'll do like LinkedIn touch points where you can mimic human behavior and integrate that with your emails as well. So maybe the same audiences that are getting emails, you automatically have them getting touch points like liking a post, connecting with them, following them. Uh, and you can even go in and message them manually if you don't want to like automate that and sound like a robot.
Right.
Yeah. So those are really it. We don't need to overcomplicate this because we could. We could use Apify to
Oh,
scrape
for
all
sure.
the stuff. We can use Clay. We can integrate all these different platforms. But really, it's only 2 or 3 different tools that are really intuitive, and that'll drive for sure results that people I think are looking for. At least start those conversations, you know.
Dude,
So
I love it. And then let me ask you, what are your thoughts on taking an email list and then just automatically adding them to your newsletter? So basically, like what I'm trying to think is, if you have this list of the pediatricians in Florida, right? And then let's just say well, you have 100, 1,000, you have 1,000 of them. And then some people have opened, some people haven't. You've done your campaign and whatever results you have. But there's hundreds of people that open their email, but they didn't do anything. So basically, do you just let their email die? Do you repurpose them in 5 months? Or, do you add them to your newsletter that you send out monthly? Like it seems like, you got some good data sets that could just go to waste. Is there a way that you could, constantly try and stay on the top of their mind other than just the campaign if you already have all their emails and everything?
yeah, it's a tough one. Like it's an ethical one too. You know, I
'Cause I'm
personally,
always at it. I'm always at it, especially as a founder, like, oh, well, I'm like,
yeah,
how the hell these people get all my shit? I'm like,
yeah.
unsubscribe. Then like another one pops up and I'm like, ah. So
It's a tough one. Like what I would say is cold email is living here. This is people who have never heard of you and you're reaching out cold. Ideally, obviously, that's still intentional. Opt-in email marketing is an entirely different game to play. In my opinion, like the reason we use platforms like Instantly for cold email is because they are built for cold email. They rotate IPs, like they have all kinds of flexible options to boost your deliverability and to protect your domain's reputation. uh, what happens if you start adding all these cold people to your opt-in email is that's going to probably burn the hell out of those whatever domains you're running and emails you're running from that because those people never asked to opt in. Now, if you're looking at more intense stuff and people who click on links or people respond but don't book a call, maybe that's a little bit of a safer route because they've obviously seen your name and they are, don't hate you or whatever. Like they're not going to flag you as spam constantly. I would just be careful. There are can spam laws, you don't have to worry about that too much. It's a matter of is that really worth that?
yeah,
Because I hear what you're saying. And I think long term ecosystem matters a lot here, right? Like we don't want to just waste those ones. If we don't hear from them in 2 months, then what? A lot of times what I do is drop them into a new campaign. I give them a little breathing room. Maybe every quarter I drop them into a new campaign
okay, cool.
instantly. And
Got it.
and I kinda, like, resurface that within Instantly itself rather than trying to drop them into a newsletter that they never asked to be part of. You know what I mean? So there are ways to nurture it.
Because I know sometimes I'm like, I never opted into this. I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
I've never even heard of this person. I'm like, I don't even know who you are. I'm like,
But it's obnoxious too, like, the reality and that is you're asking to get flagged constantly, you know what I mean? Like, if you're adding them to, like, just, like, this fancy design newsletter and stuff, and they never asked for that, your reputation of those like, you're gonna destroy that piece of your puzzle too, and in my opinion,
"Mm,
I think long term, it's a little bit concerning, where you could literally just, you clean those lists again, drop them back in 3 months later into Instantly and just run a new campaign to them then, like, I think that's a much safer option and does the same thing really, so.
what about checking your domain just in general? Like, do you recommend a platform to check your like business domain to make sure it is in good standing?
Yeah, so Instantly has a feature where you can actually check not just the health, but you can like go in there and check deliverability. You can like test an email under the domain to check deliverability as well. There are other platforms that you can do that. To be honest, I can't think of any right now, but there are platforms that can for sure like tell you the health of your domains and your emails. I work with a consultant in Canada that does like any sort of like deeper deliverability stuff for us. So I don't really touch that too much. It's an important piece of the puzzle, but I really only go that route if we're like running into issues and really seeing massive issues. I would argue that just using Instantly alone is typically good enough to see the health of something, there are a lot of platforms that you can use for sure. I can't think of any right now to check the
Okay.
health of those. So
Dude,
yeah.
love it. I love it. Is there anything I'm missing that I haven't asked you or that you wanted to talk about?
No, I think it's just important to again like think about this. People have the wrong mindset about like outbound ads, like pushy and salesy and like in your face. Nobody wants that. Like I have seen over and over just such good results being intentional about it. Like as long as you follow the steps that we were kind of talking about, what really matters here is like making sure it's the right audience for what you're doing and that you're giving it a little bit of breathing room and space too. And so I think it's cool. Like as you do this, emails one touch point, LinkedIn's another. I've seen some cool stuff and there's, if people want to play around with this a little bit, not just Clay, but there are platforms like Voice Drop that does voicemail drops and it can automate like essentially, and this gets a little bit complex, but I think it's fun. You can clone your voice and
I've
send
seen
a
that.
personalized message with like even like the custom variables like hey first name, right? And like you can literally clone your voice into these email drops or into these voicemail drops. And those get such a high response rate because it depends on the audience. Usually I think to see somewhere between like
Is
3 and
this are you
7.
this is for LinkedIn? Oh,
No, this is a separate platform called Voice Drop.
no, but I'm saying
But
you leave the voice memo and it goes to LinkedIn. Where do you
voicemail drop. So when you're scrubbing data from Apollo, it also gives you phone numbers usually, for the most part too. And so you have a lot of data to work with from these people as well. So if you want an additional touch point beyond LinkedIn and email, you can literally send ringless voicemail drops to people. Where of course we have to be cautious of, guidelines and ethical stuff and whatnot too. But it's really interesting to see the response rates on that because a lot of people just they don't care to respond to emails. They don't respond to emails. They don't use LinkedIn. But a lot of times different audiences are a little bit more receptive to calls even, which I know sounds crazy because I'm not, but you'd be shocked at the response rates on people when you're not selling them anything. Hey, I just connected with you on LinkedIn, left you a couple emails of value. Just wanted to reach out and introduce myself here. No need to call me back. Would love to stay in touch. The way you look at this is it's top of mind awareness. It's not a sales pitch. That's it.
dude, that is
At that point,
genius.
now you're getting multiple touch points without being pushy or salesy or whatever. And that's where it becomes really fascinating. It's like you can kind of have fun with this and play around with it. If you got a list of 1,000 people in your state or 500 people that would be prime targets for raising capital, you kind of almost go like account-based marketing style here where you only have so much data to work with, right? Like you can't hit them with 75 emails. It's like how do you create kind of unique angles? And now you're hitting them from a few different angles. It's really like touch points. You don't want to batter them. Like obviously if they're not interested after a certain period of time, you want to, pull off a little bit. But that's where even like sending handwritten notes, there's a platform called Handwritten, WRY. It says handwritten and it's cool as heck too, because you can integrate that with your campaigns and whatnot as well to where people who click on a link, for example, you can literally drop them handwritten letters that look like it was written by a human from this platform. Even if you send 50 of those to people who are like, if we got a call with this person, it can make thousands, tens of thousands, $100,000, right? So it depends on your audience. I'm not saying you do that for everybody by all means. That's only like the really like these would be a perfect fit. They showed some signs of interest, but didn't book with us yet or didn't sign on
Yeah.
with us yet, right? And you use it for that. You're looking at a much higher conversion rate on those because they're so unique and so different. And ideally, they've seen you in multiple touch points now that it can be worth it, but only for the ones of high value. If you do that with 5,000 contacts, yeah, it's going to cost 20 grand. So,
Has anybody done the voice drop to you?
yeah, I get ringless voicemails quite a bit. Yeah, from it's usually people who I've, like, booked a demo with, like, what I've found is it's only companies that are pretty, like, tech savvy doing this sort of stuff,
Yeah.
where, like, I booked a demo with them, but then, like, I never followed up or never signed on with it. Usually, that's what I'm doing with that. And, yeah, it's pretty fascinating. They're, like, limited you, like, wanna spin up, like, a number through voice drop. There are limitations on how much you could do each day. You wanna be a little bit careful.
Yeah.
But I know a number of people who have used this very successfully and just add it as a layer, a top of mind awareness layer, to the other things because everybody's sending just one massive email blast. That's where I'm saying, can you go one, two, three,
Yeah.
four layers deeper? And if they're a good audience, if you're cautious about who you're targeting, it's worth it. You know what I mean? Like if that's worth a big deal, or driving, the right amount of capital from one of these people, it's worth going layers deeper there, without being too complex, of course. So
The fire genius, brother. Hey, so all right, now it's your time to shine, my friend. Let's plug you. So what if people have heard all this, they're interested in learning more about you, want to consume some of your content, where should people follow you?
yeah, LinkedIn, I would say it's primary for me. Like everything I do is B2B. The reality is like I think it's interesting here too. So I work primarily with agencies to drive growth, to drive revenue, to drive relationships, to drive partnerships. And so I kind of look at this from a few different angles, but the way that, again, like I'm trying to change the way people think about outbound a little bit here. And even though like I'm trying to drive primarily like leads, conversations, and partnerships, you can use outbound for all this stuff. If you want to raise capital, if you're recruiting for somebody in your company, if you're intentional about what you're doing and you're using these as one-to-one direct pathways to somebody, it has incredible results, right? And so like typically what I do for the most part is LinkedIn. I have other social and stuff too. Website is exitvisiongrowth.io. Again, focus primarily on agencies, but really any of this works for anything that you're trying to get in front of certain job titles. Anything B2B, if you want to raise capital, if you want to again like recruit certain people, if you want to build partnerships and relationships, there are so many cool applications for outbound if you're just a decent human being and not trying to spam everybody. So, yeah, of
Nice, dude. Love it, Mike. Thanks for coming on, buddy.
course.